I have no idea what happens after we die. I have no idea why I'm having these experiences and why I'm seeing ghosts over my bed. And just having to go through this process of digging, of like
Mm.
learning who I am as a person, learning what my intuition is, learning where my trauma informs a lot of my decisions and my anxiety, and then trying to figure out where that little tiny inner voice was and how does it speak to me and how correct and accurate is it?
Hello, amazing humans, and welcome to episode number 270 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. You ever watched the movie The Secret, right? This idea that you can manifest whatever you want. You want a necklace? Bam, you get a necklace. You want a bike? Boom, you got a bike. You want a lover? Bam, got five, whatever. All of these things that we can manifest simply by desiring them. And once the movie The Secret sort of hit planet Earth, this idea of manifesting got really, really popular. And I think there's so much power in it. And one of the misconceptions is, if you really, really want something, you should just meditate about it or hope for it. It'll just fall on your head. Now, have we all had that experience before? Yeah. Like you think of somebody and they call, you bet. We have all had those moments that feel so almost magical. And then there is really understanding what this tool called manifestation is actually for, why we want to use it, and what we actually want. And the demystifying of what manifestation actually is done beautifully in today's episode with my guest, Alea Lovely. I mean, her name is lovely. Like, this is just manifestation right there for you. She is so brilliant at breaking down the steps of manifesting, and she has her own method that I really want you to listen for. I highly recommend you grabbing a piece of paper and a pen. I'm not kidding, as you listen to today's episode, because she breaks down her methodology and you are going to want to listen. Alea Lovely is a spiritual advisor and philosopher who's been an intuitive and energy coach for over 7 years. She's the creator and host of the podcast Spiritual Shit, which has topped the charts, gaining a #1 spot on iTunes in America. Growing up super religious, Alea found that a large part of her life didn't align with her own identity because she had experienced a host of spiritual experiences as a child that she just couldn't explain. And because of that, she felt she had to hide the biggest parts of herself until she knew it was time to share her gifts. And now she's helped thousands of people through energy coaching, card readings, public speaking, and her podcast. Now, as you listen into today's episode, I really hope you hear the humanity in Alia's story and how she talks about her journey in childhood. You guys, all of us are able to just absolutely resonate with what she shares about learning to listen to herself over the rest of the world and what that takes from each one of us to find the courage, the strength, and the honesty to do that with integrity. Pop in those earphones and let's get to it. Alia, welcome to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. We are going to talk about your Imagine method. We're going to talk about all things spirituality. I'm so looking forward to this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to your audience today.
Oh my gosh, this is gonna be good. We have like this beautiful, I want to say, section of our audience that is like in the closet spiritual. You know what I'm saying? They're like, I'm so woo-woo, but don't tell anybody.
Don't
They
tell
have
anybody.
this energy about them. I happen to be one of them, except I'm not so in the closet about it. I'm an incredibly pragmatic woo-wooist. I
Yes.
think that's a
Honestly, the same.
yeah. Oh, I
I'm,
love
I'm
it.
out of the closet, but like still very pragmatic, very, very logical person.
I love this. Okay, no, this is going to be so fun.
Yeah.
So I know you have like this amazing experience all throughout your childhood of just sort of tapping into the spiritual world. Sometimes when you knew what it was, sometimes you did not know. But now that you're sharing this gift that you have with the world, I know you have a lot of talents. You have a lot of different ways that you could have chosen to live this amazing life that you've been given. Why is this what you landed on? Why is this what you do on planet Earth today?
I love this question. I get chills behind it because it's so mission driven.
Mm.
Like, I think that when we think about this type of work, like, mediumship or life coaching or any of these kinds of things, I get really excited about the idea of empowering people and giving them access to that little light bulb that needs to turn on within themselves to help them understand what their gifts are in the world and help them kind of qualify themselves. Because, like, what I didn't
Ooh.
enjoy when I was growing up was I was having all these experiences and always looking for someone to tell me what they meant, and then getting these kind of like, oh, it must be demons, it must be this, and always being taken one way or the other based on someone else's opinion or ideology. And when I kind of grew out of that, I kind of had this like huge awakening when I was 25 that I ended up dropping my religion,
Mm.
doing like a 180, like just becoming a complete atheist. purpose. And like being in the space of like, I have no idea what happens after we die. I have no idea why I'm having these experiences and why I'm seeing ghosts over my bed and, things like that. And just having to go through this process of digging, of like
Mm.
learning who I am as a person, learning what my intuition is, learning where my trauma informs a lot of my decisions and my anxiety, and then trying to figure out where that little tiny inner voice was and how does it speak to me and how correct and accurate is it? I was so bent on asking others, the priest or the pastor or the college professor or whatever, what does this mean? And not really having a lot of tools to be able to excavate that within myself. So it's really important for me in the work that I do that I not only help guide others to, the answers that they're looking for, but also give them the tools and the depth of understanding how to do that themselves. So that way they're never reliant or never dependent on someone else again.
I love that. And I'm going to expand this out a little bit
Yeah.
because I feel like, isn't that like yours was about really specific experiences? And I can really get that journey. Like, I have a lot of compassion for that of like, what the heck is this? And then
Mhm.
turning into you instead of, can somebody please tell me what this means?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, is that something we all go through? Because I would say our intuition is the softest voice in the room, and it takes
Yeah.
so long. I think, especially as women, we're always told not to trust our own emotions or not to trust
Mhm.
our own intuition. Other people know better, like that kind of an
Yeah.
energy. Do you think it takes a long time for us to turn into that? I mean, that is incredible that you did that. You started that journey at 25?
Yeah, and there are people, my
Incredible.
clients, I have clients right now who are doing it at 19, at
Wow.
22, at, like what I would have given
I
to
know,
have the
right?
knowledge
Yeah,
that
so
they
true.
have, that I
Yeah.
didn't get until I was in my mid 30s. They're having it now. And I think that just has to do with the frequency of where we're at in the planet right now.
Mm,
It doesn't necessarily have to do with age as much as it has to do with where the conscious awakening is happening currently.
yeah.
And so, like, I don't necessarily think it takes a long time as much as it takes a lot of like digging. What takes a long time is sometimes the digging is hard. Like it's really hard for us to come to a place where we're acknowledging maybe I don't know it all, or maybe that trauma that I had with my mom is, really affecting my decisions, or
Yeah.
maybe that boyfriend, whatever the thing is. And sometimes we're not being as honest with ourselves.
Mm.
And I think like I have a unique curiosity when I was little, and especially like in my religious background. I remember when I was 11, and not to offend anybody who might be a believer here, like I'm not here to like dismantle any religion or anything like that. But I had an issue because I was like, well, it doesn't make sense to me that God would continue to send people down here to choose him. But if they kept messing up, then he had to send his kids to hell. Like that doesn't make sense to me. Why wouldn't he just start the world all over again or just keep his kids at home? Like that just didn't make sense to me. My pastor, or not my pastor,
Yeah.
my mom was like,
Yeah.
you should probably ask your Sunday school teacher about that. And then I asked, and they were like, you need to leave. Like, like I got kicked out
No.
of class that day
Oh
because they
my
were like, you
gosh.
are not showing faith. And I was like, there's something fundamentally wrong with not being able to ask
Wow.
questions. And I was 11. So I've always been like that. So in my own curiosity, I even said, I was like, well, God created me this way. So he should be understanding about my questions. And so I'm
Yeah.
constantly doing that questioning of
Wow.
asking even myself, like, is that actually the truth, or is that the story I'm telling myself? Is that the story you're
Mm.
telling yourself? And being able to have that self-awareness to come into contact with our own egos and say, like, maybe sometimes we are wrong. And sometimes this isn't the right direction. And sometimes we really, really want something to happen and we have an expectation. So we wish and will those answers into our life while we're negating the red flags in the background.
Mm.
So the clients that I have most often come to me around clarity on those types of decisions. And it's like usually we have little, Easter eggs along the way that kind of tell us like, that ain't it. That's not the guy. Or, like things like that that we tend to ignore. So it's a
Mhm.
process of being able to acknowledge self in a deeper way. And in a like it's almost like, getting to know a friend. Like how fast do you want to get to know that friend? How vulnerable are you?
Mm.
So it's not a time thing, it's like an awareness thing.
It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think whether the content is spirituality, money, growth, business, relationships, love, like it doesn't even matter what the
Mhm.
content is, right? It's like the
Yeah.
context
Yeah.
is how well do you know yourself in this moment and listening to these signs.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Well, I could talk about that for about another 3 hours. That is amazing. I love that.
That's all I talk about.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, so good. Because I feel like we are taught from second one to silence that, right? To
Yeah.
doubt ourselves, to doubt what we're hearing, to doubt what we're feeling. And I think, at 11 for you to have been that courageous and that like, I almost want to say common sense about it. Like, wait a minute, this is not computing. Right? And I'm
Something
not
does
a
not
rocket
compute
scientist,
here.
but this is not computing. Yeah. Really beautiful, really
Thank
beautiful.
you.
And through all of this journey and the journey you're now taking other people on, I know you have something called the Imagine Method. Can you like talk about what that is? I would love to understand
Yeah.
more about what you do and how you do it.
Yeah. So I have this book, and it's called Meaningful Manifestation, but manifestation was kind of like my gateway drug into spirituality, like in connecting back to myself. When I was in that kind of like atheist space where I didn't feel like I had any guidance or any connection to God or anything like that, I was in a really like dark place in my life where things were just falling apart and I just like had nowhere to turn to. So I happened to be at the gym one day scrolling, YouTube or something, and The Secret came across my YouTube algorithm. Thank you. Anyway, and so I dove headfirst in to this idea of manifestation and what it meant and positive thinking and affirmations and all that. But I found there to be missing elements of that formula because
Mhm.
it was like, I can think positive all day long, but like I'm still a black woman of size in this world. Like there are certain things that are if it feel available to me and that are not in my socioeconomic status, like where I was at the time. And then looking at like, it kind of fell in line with the aspects of my religion that also I fundamentally felt like I couldn't agree with. It was like this person gave me the coat off their back, and because they don't
Mhm.
believe in this thing, they're going to go to hell. Like that just didn't make sense to me. So there were these little like misalignments that were coming into contact where I was like, this is a great concept. Manifestation is a great concept, but it feels like it's missing something because
Mm.
they're calling it a law and it doesn't work the same for everyone every time. So like people having that frustration in that, I was like starting to see not just clients, but in my own experience where it was like this, where they're saying, think this, do this, and I still don't have a man on my arm, like I still don't have this, like what's happening?
Right.
So
Right.
that was frustrating to me. And so, like, I mean, that was years ago. So, like, I've gone through that process. I have a better idea. And yes, positive thinking is really important to the perspective. Because if you're in a negative mindset or mind space, it's going to be more difficult to see those opportunities. It's going to be more difficult to have the encouragement that you need to get through the harder times.
Mm.
It's going to be more difficult to see perspective that's in there when you're clinging to a negative narrative. So I get that. I understand that. But the Imagine method came out of like, I actually just channeled it. I was on a road trip and I was like, oh, like I'm getting a bubble. Like I get these channels, these downloads that come in. And I started to write it out and I started to think about what does it mean to live a good life? Like at the end of the day, it doesn't mean having the yacht and 1,000 billion followers or whatever. Like, no, like none of that shit matters. Like, sorry,
All
none of
good.
that stuff matters. It's okay. So that being said, it's important for us to kind of come into contact with why we want what we want. Like, why is it important that we have these particular things? Are these
Mm.
going to make our life better?
Mm.
Or are they going to cause us to have dynamic incompatibilities with our lifestyle? For instance, we want that $60,000 car. And it's like, okay, cool. You can have that $60,000 car, but are you comfortable working the hours that are going to take you away from your family, which are a higher priority for you to have that car? Or
Yeah.
would it be nicer to get something a little bit older that you can pay off and you don't have to worry about month to month? So being able to see the meaningful aspects in that to me was more important. And so I start people off before you even get into the method of listing off your 5 maxims. Your 5 maxims are like the top 5 things that you need to have in order to have a good life. So to give an example, financial security, romantic love, time spent with family, health and wellness, like, the list goes on depending on the person. And they kind of fall into these like neat little categories. So I have my clients kind of go through and list, 20 to 30 like things. And then we kind of pare them down into like priorities. And then rate them. Like, okay, right now in my life, time with my family is number one.
Mm.
Right now, second in my life, like then it's, passions achieved in the work that I want to do. Third might be financial security. So if I get 4 new clients that want to sign on and my schedule's already packed, like I might be trying to manifest more money, but it's in direct conflict with my top maxim. So it's a misalignment of energies. So in that regard, it's kind of helpful for people to be able to look at that and say, oh, I didn't get that job because I wasn't thinking positively enough. I didn't get that job because actually I don't want that job. Like,
Wow.
actually, I might need that job, but I
Mm.
need money in this way so that way I can spend more time with my family. So, where do I find that little compromise where it actually works out in my best and highest good? So,
Oh
we
my
go through that
gosh.
process. Thanks.
I know. I mean, I'm sorry. That is so powerful what you just said. I
Thank
mean, I
you.
hope that like little eardrums heard that and that like went in because wow. I didn't get
Yeah.
that job because that's not the one I want. I think
Mhm.
whatever that is, right? Pick it. The guy,
Yeah.
the body, the looks, whatever, pick a thing.
Look,
But that
so
is,
let's talk about body. That's a
yeah.
really important one for me. So for instance, I have hormone issues and I have a lot of other things going on. And the idea of body, for instance, like what does it mean to get into a healthy body? Health and wellness is on my top 5 maxims for a good life. But every time I get into some type of routine or, like start eating well and whatever, like I always fall off the wagon. What is that about? Well, I started to do a lot of excavating. It took a few years. So this is not an overnight thing, just so listeners know.
Let's be
But
clear.
it took a
Yeah.
few years to realize that like I had an SA experience and I noticed when the weight issues began where I didn't feel safe in my body. And
Hmm.
so for me, carrying the extra weight meant that I wasn't as attractive to people I thought might harm me.
Hmm.
And because that happened at such a young age, I wasn't necessarily aware or conscious that that was playing a large role into safety. And so
Hmm.
when I start losing weight and I start becoming more traditionally attractive to the rest of the world, my brain goes, that means you're not safe.
Yeah.
So then it clicks off. And it's like, I've been so mean to myself
Ugh.
year after year saying, you don't have enough willpower. You're not disciplined enough. You're just this fat, like just going off on myself,
Mhm.
not realizing that, like, oh, I have a trauma here
Yeah.
that is informing my brain and my nervous system about what is healthy and what is not and what's going to keep me safe on
Mm.
this earth. So when saw that, I was like, wow, okay, so it's not my highest maximum to be a size 6.
Right.
Like, but it is the highest maximum for me to be healthy and be around and be here for my kids. What's the compromise here? My compromise is to be strong. So I can leg press 550 pounds.
Holy cannoli.
Yeah.
Oh my
Like
god. I did like
I go to the
170 the
gym.
other day. I was excited. Wow, that's impressive. Oh
I
my
go to the
gosh.
gym and I'm able to put all of those weights up, and the guys look at me like, what is she doing? And then I go and do
Wow.
10 reps and their mouths are open and I feel like, hell yeah. You know,
Oh,
so that makes me feel strong. That makes me
yeah.
feel well in some way. So I found the compromise. I don't have to be a size 6. I'm a happy size 16, but
Mhm.
like I can kick your butt if I want to. Like, you know,
Don't.
so
Right?
I'm
Yeah,
just
it's
like
like, don't even
jujitsu
try it.
soon.
Yeah. And I think
um,
that's quite common. I share on the show openly after, again, years and years of work. So just like you
mm,
were sharing, I was sexually abused for most of my childhood. And
oh,
I
sorry.
found the same struggle is,
Hmm.
severe obesity runs in my family. And I was like, I don't want to be severely obese. And it was this constant struggle of
Hmm.
not feeling safe.
Yeah.
Right, and I'll see it happen even now. If someone makes advances that I don't want, I immediately run to the kitchen, like
Yeah.
clockwork. It is
Yeah.
so fast, and I think I really appreciate you sharing that story and that specific example, because I think for so many of us, there's other things at play, and I think that's a really potent example for a lot of us can really relate to that when that starts to conflict, and that we turn to self-flagellation when that happens, right?
Yeah.
"God, you're so
Yeah.
lazy. What is wrong with you? Everyone else can do this." All those
Yeah.
we all know them because we all have the same ones, but how violent that is internally and that you're able to support people in saying, "Oh, no, we don't need to be violent about this to ourselves.
Mhm.
There's actually something going on here that we can work
Yeah.
with."
So you
Really
then have to
powerful.
start reprogramming your mind and
Yeah.
like what that looks like. What does safety look like? Well, I don't know what it's like to be in a size 6 body anymore, but it's like, okay, well, if I can still make myself healthy this way, then this is a nice compromise until I feel safe enough to take the next step into the other thing that I think is a maximum of mine. So that leads us then to the
Gorgeous.
Imagine method itself. Thank you. So we start with inception. Where are you starting from? Like
Okay.
what is your current reality? So like that acknowledgement is a nice inception point because
Okay.
it gives us an access to what we're actually dealing with. It's taking the time to look at our situation where it's at, give grace to where it's at, and just to be aware of it, not to judge it, not to, just to accept where it's at. If I'm trying to get to California and I live in Kansas City and you live in New York, I'm going to get there faster than you. And that's just an acknowledgement. Like there's no judgment. It's like, oh, you happen to live in Kansas City. Big whoop. So in the same way, someone might not have had an SA experience, or they don't
Right.
have hormone issues, or someone happens to have pretty privilege or racial privilege or financial privilege, whatever the thing
Mhm.
is. You don't need to flagellate yourself because you don't have access to those particular things. It might take you longer. So just being able to acknowledge that and accept where we're at is a good enough space to start to know that we have an evolution that can happen. It just might not happen like so and so. So being able to
Mm,
just have the awareness around that. So the second step is manifestation. It is the acknowledgement of what is it that you want, and having to actually ask yourself, why do I want what I want? Is an authentic desire something that comes from me, or is it an inauthentic desire? Like, why do I want a yacht? Well, because everybody
right.
on Instagram has a yacht. Like, ugh, like it's just like, okay, like we don't need to just be a copy paste of somebody else because of social media and its prevalence in our life. And these days, we are in this constant self comparison game. Like, I'm on Pinterest all the time because it's my favorite. But I look at these people's houses and I'm suddenly in discontent with my own.
Mm.
And I have a nice house. Like I put a lot of pride in all the things that I've done to make my house really beautiful. But like I can still get on there and be like, oh, I should have done it this way. Or should,
Mhm.
like just all of that. So like, why do you want what you want? Are you being influenced? Or is that an authentic need that's per your maxims? Like
Mm,
health and wellness is important. Do I need to be a size 2? Why do I want to be a size 2? Well, because the world treats size 2 people. People are mean to fat people, like, whatever.
mhm,
There are reasons why we cultivate that, but can we be an individual and decide why we want those things? So then you have A, which is anti-belief. Why can't you have what it is that you want? What are the negative voices that come into your mind that say, I can't have this because, and
mm.
some of those are real. Some of those are very real. Okay, I want to live in France, right? Like, but I can't live in France right now because we have very small children who are in school. I am a stepmother as well, and we have custody here. So we are kind of locked in for the next, 12 years. That may be like, okay, I have this authentic desire to go and live there and do this experience, but it's going to have to happen later.
Mhm.
But what we tend to do is if it doesn't seem like it's in our immediate sight, we'll cut it off. We'll say, oh no, that will never happen. I can't have that. Like we'll throw it away instead of just being like, okay, well, this is not for now. This is for later. This is for a
Yeah.
possibility for later. And so, for instance, when people want a relationship and it's like, well, I can't see it in my immediate future. So I must be, a hoe bag that nobody wants. Like, it's like, what? Like, why would that be the answer? You're not so special that you, out of anybody in the entire world, can't find love.
Preach on it.
Like,
I love
no,
that. Yeah.
like, and that's kind of like I have that as a line. You're not that special to not find love. You've seen 90 Day Fiance. You've seen Love Is
I
Blind.
didn't.
You've seen all of this. There are plenty of people out there
Yeah.
who are not good people who find love, right? So, like, what's stopping you, right? Now,
I
there
love
are
it.
then the narrative aspects that say, I can't have this because. Why
Mm.
are you telling yourself that? Is it trying to keep you safe? In what way is it serving you?
Yeah.
Because, like, they serve us. These little lies that we tell ourselves, they definitely serve us. They serve our safety, they serve our vulnerability. And, like, when you want to be super real with yourself, it's like, okay, I'm keeping this as a belief because I'm afraid of not getting it or being disappointed. I'm afraid of putting myself out there. It's better for me to face the devil I know versus the devil I don't.
Yeah. And
So it kind of keeps in
really
that cycle.
I really love what you just said is we don't keep doing something unless it's serving us at some level, right? And it's not truly serving like the capital S version of self, right? Like the
Yeah.
big,
Yeah.
big version of us that could be out there really fully self-expressed, but the vulnerability we can feel on planet Earth, right? The
Mhm.
unacceptedness of being
Yeah.
human right now, not being good enough, not fitting in exactly all the things that you've been talking about, that we can keep ourselves small so no
Mhm.
one finds out we don't really fit.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So
I think
just
it's
being
so
able to
important.
acknowledge that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Like just being able to acknowledge that is super important because then it tells us where our hurdle is. If we can at least see it, we know we can do something with it. Maybe we don't do anything with it this year. Maybe we just look at it and we're like, all right, now I'm aware that that's there. I'm gonna let you sit and marinate for a little bit, but like then we're gonna have to do something about it. So that leads us to our next one, which is growth. G, what needs to change in order to get what it is that you want? So these are action steps, like starting to kind of like, okay, if I wanted to get a, safer body, that means that I'm going to keep lifting my 550 pounds, like whatever the thing is that you want to do, right?
Yeah.
It means that I might have to get on the apps and talk to people. It might mean that I have to go out and do this. It might mean I have to work a little bit harder. It might mean that I need to get on top of my taxes. It might mean that like I need to finally get childcare or get a team to help, things like that. Those are all my examples. Um,
I
but
love it. I love it.
those,
Yeah.
those those just being like those areas where you're acknowledging that like action is required
Mhm.
for us to get beyond some of these beliefs that we have for ourselves because some of them are so deeply ingrained, sometimes not even by us, parents or society or patriarchy or whatever, like there could be
Mhm.
so many messages that we're getting that are telling us we can't have or we can't do, when in fact it's like, okay, well, we need a little elbow grease here. We might have to actually do some digging here to get outside of it, to grow outside of that.
I love
So
that. Yeah.
then,
Yeah. Growth is not armchair activity.
oh no.
Takes action. Yeah. Yeah.
It's very much get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
Like you have to really like get into the game there. So it is a pivotal step. It's why it's the middle step, because it is, kind of the transformative aspects of like when we're really kind of trying to bust out of that chrysalis and become the butterfly. It takes some work. Like it takes like the butterfly cannot fly if it doesn't strengthen its wings through the process of breaking through that cocoon. And the cocoon is hot and sweaty and dark. And sometimes we're in that space where we're needing to break free. And sometimes that space of tightness serves us so that we can grow.
Mm,
So it's purposeful.
mm,
It's very purposeful. So then we move into the next step, integration. How do you apply that change to your life? Because it's one thing to be like, I need to do this. Okay, so what does it look like for you specifically? How do you apply it to your life specific?
mhm.
Because we have life coaches and mentors and whatever. You need more self-worth. Okay, so we know that that is a thing. We know that
Right.
that's something we need to do, but how do we do that? How do we apply that in our daily life? That means I need
Mhm.
to start treating myself with respect. It means I need to stop talking down to myself every time. I used to have a rubber band. Every time I'd say something mean about myself, I would pop myself. And that seems so like cliche because like people do that all the time. But it was definitely something that I was like, wow, I didn't realize how
How
often
often?
I
Yeah.
was saying these things. Yeah, like how prevalent it was. So
So
bringing
cool.
that awareness means that I had to actually put the action to work in a way that worked for my life. Then we get into the more fun step, which is noticing, which like I think noticing is the synchronicities, like observing the signs and things that help you notice and expand more into it. Because there is a part of once we're getting through that growth and that integration point where we're like, oh, this is not as hard as it used to be. Oh, I'm growing. Like just being able to observe and say like, oh, I got over that hill and
Mm,
I didn't do it like I did last time. I didn't throw a huge fit this time or, like just things like that. Or like then the universe starts showing you signs of being like, hey, you went on that date and that guy's really nice. It's not that guy, but it's like you've opened yourself up now. Like they can see
yeah.
you now, right? I used to be super invisible, like had nobody, no prospects, nothing. And then all of a sudden really hot men were like, hey, how you
Hey.
doing? What's going on? Like I had a guy, I'm not joking. I was in Bali and I had gone through this like massive transformation about like who I am, what I thought about myself. I was in Shavasana and I had this memory of being 9 years old and me having to quit gymnastics. So like me having to quit gymnastics, my dad saying I had to quit gymnastics because I got a C in one of my classes. Now they didn't know I was dyslexic at the time.
Oh.
But I knew that I was having to quit gymnastics, not because I got a C, but because we didn't have enough money for my classes. Because my parents were behind like 3 seasons or something on the classes. And I was like, man, like, first of all, I was really upset because I was like, well, how you make the child feel like it's my fault? Like, I already knew that. I just very intuitive, inquisitive, quirky child. But this element of where I then decided I must do everything by myself. If I want anything in this world, I cannot depend on anyone else. I need to
Mm,
make sure that it is up to me that I have it so no one else can take it away. It was a very early decision and
wow.
maybe dramatic, but a very
But it
early
makes
foundational
sense.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm having this memory while I'm laying on the mat and I could hear, my intuition say that, there's no room for anyone in your life. You have to do everything yourself. You don't have any space for anyone to contribute. You wouldn't even ask for help if you were dying on the side of the street. Like you would try to find a way to walk yourself there with no, knowing that about myself at the time and hearing those words of like, you don't even have space for someone
Mm,
to come into your life. That's why no one can see you. No one knows you're available because there's no room. You're saying, I'm closed. Don't worry about me. I got it. I had that awareness and I just told myself, I'm ready to be open. Like I'm ready to allow someone to come in and help me contribute to my life, that I don't have to carry everything on my own, that my needs and wants are not a burden to someone else. Because that's what I thought when I was little.
yeah.
And then I'm not joking. Like a week later, I was at the airport leaving Bali, going to France. And there's this man that walks across the airport and he's like, do you have angel wings on? And I was like, what kind of line is this? Like, this is ridiculous. And he's like, I'm not joking. I could see your aura over there. And I was like, we are in Bali. So it's very like, everybody's kind of
Yes.
woo
Very
woo.
spiritual
Yeah.
location.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he, gives me his phone number, he's from Greece and whatever, and he's all beautiful and stuff. But like, it was this moment of me being like, what? And
What
kind of
just
having
happened?
whiplash. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whiplash because like I had thought myself invisible. I had thought
Mm,
myself unattractive. I had thought myself like nobody wants me,
mm,
and have someone walk across the whole air. I saw him coming, like, what's going on? Like, and him saying, "You're the brightest shining person in here." And I'm like, this sounds like crazy. And then I got to France. I was there to work. And this is right before COVID happened, by the way. And I'm walking down the Ritz, getting ready to meet some friends for drinks. This other guy from London comes out and he's like, "Oh, hey, where you headed, babes?" And like, like the whole deal. And we ended up having a drink and having this really amazing time. We went on a few dates or whatever. And I was like, it's not this guy. I'm very aware it's not this guy, but it's the first time I've ever felt this opening because I made this space. So that's very much a part of N where you start to see like, oh wait, I've overcome something here. I've opened myself up. Energetically speaking, things are shifting. And I met my husband like 4 months later.
That's
So
really cool. And that's such a good example, of noticing the change. I
mhm.
love that notice is your second N, right? No,
Mhm.
it's your only N in imagine.
Yeah.
Hello. But I love that is noticed because I think so often we can be in the trenches of manifesting, right? Of like
Mhm.
working on our lives, doing our things, and today can look a lot like yesterday, and we can forget to
Mhm.
notice
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
actually changing. Yeah, I really love that that's in there. I think that's so important, Aaliyah. I love that
Thank you.
you've designed this way. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that it's important because it does give us a little bit of more courage in
Mm,
the waiting time period. Because sometimes if we're not aware, we're like, this is never coming. It's like, oh, if I could have seen in that opportunity with those particular men as like, oh, see, look, I knew nobody ever loved me because it didn't turn out into what I expected it to. But instead, I
mhm,
saw it as steps because I was like, oh, wait, 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 this is different. This is different. It's better than the last. And me being able to have that awareness gave me the wherewithal to wait. Like it gave me
mhm,
this opening to wait for what I knew I deserved. And like that was a part of me building self-worth. So the noticing part is really important to that because it's like giving you like, oh, look, like I'm getting a little pat on my back from the universe saying like, hey, you're doing something here. So the last step is expansion. And so expansion is, essentially like, what do you do once you've realized that manifestation that you wanted to bring into your life? And I feel like no one talks about this. It's like, what do you do once you get the thing you want?
oh,
Because you can
seriously.
be in that space where you get the thing you want and realize maybe this isn't what I wanted.
Mhm.
And that
It's so
happens all the
common.
time.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
All the time, all the time. And sometimes we then fault ourselves, like, "Oh,
Mm,
maybe I don't know what I want," or, "Oh, like like we feel bad or guilty around that because we worked so hard to get that. And that's why we start with the prioritizing our maxims first because sometimes we're running after a manifestation that's not in alignment with the way we prioritize our life. What is a
mm,
good life for us? And so I'm hoping that kind of circumvents some of that for people to do that work ahead of time. But expansion, like, I mean, for instance, all I wanted was a family. Like I wanted the
mm.
husband, the house, the family, or whatever. And I manifested like a boss, almost too hard, where I got all of that in 6 months. Like just
Wow.
craziness. Like I met my husband, we got pregnant within 6 weeks on purpose. Like we just knew we were like each other's soulmates. Everybody's always like, is that an accident? I was like, no, it was on purpose. And then bought a house like shortly after that, a house that I dreamt about before. We got it. Like just all this stuff all happened at the same time. And then I had my baby and I had this really traumatic birth. Like
Mm,
really traumatic birth. I almost died. And I'm sitting there feeding her, like maybe she's like 2 weeks old or so. She will not stop crying. My milk is not coming in properly. Like I'm sitting there at 3 a.m. and I
mhm,
am just like, is this what I wanted? Like that moment of just like heartbreak,
mm,
PTSD, trauma, all the things like swirling hormones and whatnot. And yes, it is what I wanted. But like in these moments where it's like, oh, it didn't make me just automatically happy. Like, oh, like all my problems weren't solved because I got that manifestation. I think that that's so important for people to realize that like happiness is an inside job. And if you are trying to get things or manifest things for your happiness, you're doing it wrong
mm,
because those things will not bring you happiness. I really believe that manifestation is only here to help us learn about ourselves, who we are, what we want, our identity, those kinds of things. And then the process starts all over again. You get up into a new level and then suddenly you want something else. So it's an ongoing process to help
yeah,
us discover who we are as people.
mm,
Like the house that we bought, it's a huge house. Like we don't live in like the nicest area of like it's not like I'm not flexing here. It was a very inexpensive house, but it was perfect for what our family needed at the time. And To this day, I'm like, this house is too big. Like, it's too much to clean up. It's too much to keep up with. I'm like, we could move in a 2-bedroom apartment, squeeze all the kids in one room. We would be fine. And like, it's funny because it's like, I thought I needed all of this
Mhm.
and know that I don't need all of this. So as this process of self-discovery, we'll probably keep this house forever, but like there's these moments where you're like, oh, I was trying to manifest from this, like my inner child of always like feeling like the homes that we were in weren't very nice, or, I grew up super poor. So like I was overcompensating for my inner child, and my inner child got what it wanted. But now the adult I am is like, this is a lot to keep up with.
I love
So
that
merging
example.
those two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true. I actually use that in workshops when I have people choose goals. I'm like, everyone wants a big house. And then they're like, someone has to clean this thing. And
Yeah.
but I love that you have the same example. We're like kindred spirits. It makes me so
Yeah.
happy because I think I love too the way you break it down to the inner child versus the adult, and that inner healing work we have to consistently be sort of looking for and I love the way you call it digging. I think
Mhm.
that's so great because it really is kind of that feeling of like, you still under there? Like,
Yeah.
are we deep enough? Like, what's going on? It's such a magnificent system. So can you sum up for us the Imagine again, just so we make sure everybody has it from
Yeah.
inception to expansion?
First, you start with your 5 maxims. What are the 5 maxims for good life? And then you have I for inception, M for manifestation, A for anti-belief, G for growth, I for integration, N for noticing, and then E for expansion.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh. I will have to be making sure people have pens and papers for this episode. Oh, yeah. This has just been extraordinary. Like, what a beautiful. And I know you called it a download, but you have an extraordinary gift for organization and
Thank you.
explanation.
Thank you.
And I think it's what a beautiful compliment to your ability to download and to be so connected to source and spirit the way that you are. It's a really beautiful combo.
Thank you. Do you like astrology?
I do.
Okay, so anybody who's like an astrology girly out here, my Mercury is on my midheaven, and midheaven is like your contribution, career, public image, like what you do with your life, and Mercury is the planet of communication. And so my teacher who was teaching, she's like, I've never seen this. Like I have mine 20 degrees and 4 minutes. And the Mercury is 20 degrees and 4 minutes. It's exactly on there. So I'm supposed to be talking for a living. So it's kind of
Good
funny.
job.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
really. I mean, there are some people we want talking more. You are one of them. We're like, please keep talking. Please keep sharing this message. I really want to acknowledge the way that you have sort of rounded out the edges, of what manifestation really is. Because I do the joke all the time. I'm like, it does not mean sitting on your couch and waiting for $1 million to drop on your head.
Yeah.
Like, that is not what this is.
Yeah.
And I love The Secret as well, but I think a lot of people can get that idea from that movie that like, oh, well, if I want a necklace, I'm just
Mhm.
gonna get one, right? And
Yeah.
and it's sure, sometimes that can happen, and that's a fun
Yeah.
game to play, but what are we actually doing with this? And
Yeah.
what is there
I
to
wanna say something about that. That's a really
Yeah,
good
talk to me.
at the very beginning, I do think it does work like that at the beginning because universe, spirit, whatever you want to identify with is like, "Yes, let's move you in that direction to start learning." But then at some point, it's like, "All right, well, you got the cookie and you got this and like, okay, so now you know this works, so now you need to do the work."
What you gonna do with it? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And it really stuck out to me when you said, manifestation is here to teach us more about ourselves.
Mhm.
I think that really stuck with me. And it goes all the way back to the beginning when you were really fighting for your own intuition, your own connection to self and your own
Yeah.
understanding of what your gifts are here and what you're able to do with this and really pulling that inward. And that manifestation is here to support that. I think I'm going to remember that forever. It was
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, Alia, if someone's listening to you and they're like, excuse me very much, I need me some more of her. Where do you love to hang out online and where can people find you?
You can find me at thelovelyalia.com. I have a book coming out, will be out by the time this airs, called Meaningful Manifestation, that goes through this entire process with lots of stories. Hay House love stories. So you can find that at any bookstore, Amazon, wherever, or you can go to thelovelyalia.com/book. And then I also have a free workshop that I'd love to offer you that it's 2, almost 3-hour workshop that
Wow.
goes through this entire process that you can go through and learn as well. It's actually what I based the book off of. So I came up with that method and then made the workshop and then was like, oh yeah, this might be a good book. So I put that there. You can also find me on Instagram at the lovely Alia as well.
So good. So good. Well, listen, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. It has been
Thank you, Sarah.
enlightening and inspiring, and I'm so excited to start to work this out. My 5 maxims are like half written out in my head already. So good. So good. I so appreciate you and thank you for what you're doing on planet Earth right now. We desperately need you.
I appreciate that so much. Thanks so much for having me. It was a blast.